Shit! That was so close! I almost fucking died! Jesus fucking Christ. So I was thinking, I love Diablo 2, played it for hundreds of hours since I was a kid, so why when I play it now I feel like I'm watching that school presentation from Jimmy Neutron?
Dear Ahmedia, today I moved a 1-ton boulder across the broiling desert sands. Then I had lunch. Then they cut my tongue out.
Then I asked myself, what makes Diablo 2 fun in the first place? The loot, of course. And why is it so unfathomably boring to me now? Well, that is because playing it online with bots and broken economy against no-life speedrunners and full-time grinders makes everything inconsequential. Whatever progress you'll make, it could have easily been done much faster and with no difficulty at all, and whatever loot you will find, you can easily get better stuff for free in a public game. And it's not like you even need good stuff when Blizzard Sorceress or Screaming Barbarian destroys the whole game with some basic gear anyway, so why would you even bother? And then it dawned on me that I should approach the game from a different perspective, almost as a roguelike. What makes a generic roguelike fun? You don't care about optimizing everything or finding best loot in the game. Instead, you're trying to survive and reach the end by using whatever you can find by chance. I need to add restrictions and change the end goal in order to make the process itself fun from start to finish, and not just a boring obstacle to grind through to actually reach the fun part. So I need to make every little thing matter. And to achieve that, I can combine hardcore mode with a self-imposed solo self-found rule, forcing me to only use items found by that particular character. And it works. That mediocre unique item you wouldn't even look at on your normal playthrough suddenly looks like Sydney Sweeney, and you can even take it up a notch by playing suboptimal but fun builds, something so gear dependent that it makes the game 100 times more difficult, but also each gear upgrade 100 times more exciting. Now you're having fun simply leveling, surviving and making your character better piece by piece. The journey itself becomes important, you know? The friends we find along the way. That's why I decided to do the only sensible thing here. I'm starting a series where I beat Diablo 2 hardcore solo self-found as every class in the game. And while I won't be specifically choosing the hardest build available, I will be choosing the build that looks more fun to me, which often excludes powerful, easy-to-use builds and makes the game much harder as well. And, as you probably figured already, I start with an Amazon, specifically a physical melee Amazon using spares. We start on normal and I immediately set the difficulty to player 8. This setting makes it so everything is scaled to the game with 8 players in it, meaning more health and damage for enemies, but also more loot and experience. One of the advantages of playing offline is an ability to set the difficulty to whatever level you want, and I generally prefer to run normal on player 8, nightmare on player 3 and hell on player 1. First level up and I have to decide on which route to take. Stats-wise, I will go for enough strength and dexterity for equipment, and the rest into vitality to have as much health as possible. If I'll start to have issues with hit chance, I will put some more points into dexterity. For skills I'm going full physical, which means I'm starting with 1 point into jab. And I will be putting first few points into useful passives like critical strike, which gives me a chance for double damage, and dodge, which gives me a chance to, well, dodge. I clear out the Den of Evil for a free skill point and return to the city, where I buy a helm and an armor with 2 sockets, as well as a socketed spare in which I put a chipped emerald for some poison damage, useful early on. Immediately after, I do the second quest and kill the Blood Raven to get my first mercenary as a reward. It is Alize, with cold specialty, which should help me with crowd control. I also find my first charm, which gives me some lightning resistance. Charms are using limited inventory space, so you have to prioritize. And for this character my priorities are resistances, then attack damage and attack rating, then life, in that order. There are also skillers, of course, but you have to be extremely lucky to find even one in a run like this, unless you grind extensively. And speaking of extreme luck, a bunch of skellies in Underground Passage draw me my first set item. And it is probably the best item I could hope for this early. It is a belt from Death Disguise set, which gives me a very important and hard to get Cannot Be Frozen, which is so good that I expect this belt can easily last me until the end of the run. A very hopeful start. I reach level 12 and learn my first main skill, Impale. It is a very strong to very polarizing single target skill. On one hand, it is very annoying to use, one of the slowest skills in the game, if not the slowest, and has a chance to lower your weapon durability with every use, which will force me to repair every 5 minutes for the rest of this run. On the other hand, it has incredible single target damage, never misses, cannot be interrupted, and, most importantly, applies slow, which renders even the most of the bosses almost harmless. Another visit to Charcy nets me a spare with 3 sockets. I save Kane in Tristram and find a +7 to life small charm, which seems insignificant, but considering that I look for about 1000 life total at the end of this run, stacking a bunch of those can easily mean, what, +10% life increase or so. Next, I do some countess runs to find some basic runes. Always change the difficulty bug to player 1 when doing countess. She basically has 2 drop tables, a normal one and a rune specific one, and with higher difficulty you have a higher chance of her normal drop table to overwrite all the drops from the rune table. I farm her until I find Tal and add runes to make the best early armor rune ward in the game, Stealth, which gives me a bunch of movement speed, faster hit recovery, dexterity, poison resist, all the good stuff. Continuing to the barracks, I find my first rare amulet. Not a good one, but better than nothing, I guess. I also kill the smith and take the mallet back to Charcy, buy normal boots and imbue them, hoping for some movement speed and resist. Alas, I don't get much of anything, but at least it has a chance to cast Frost Nova when struck, which is quite useful to have on a melee character for even more crowd control. Just like in real life, I reach level 18 and now I can legally use an important passive skill, Penetrate, which gives me a huge percentage boost to attack rating. I enter the cathedral and find a bunch of tainted, scary bastards who can do a lot of damage out of nowhere, especially before you have maxed out resistances. And they can curse you with amplified damage as well. I reach the first boss of the game, Andariel, which does a lot of poison damage, so I have to buy some antidotes for myself and for Alize. Antidote not only cures a poison status, but also raises poison resistances temporarily. Andariel goes down without much trouble and drops me a bunch of runes and gems, but not much besides that. Time for Act 2, which is a desert, which makes it one of my favorite acts in the game. There are few universal rules applied to all of the gaming for me, and one of those rules is every jungle level sucks, and every desert level rocks. Well, first things first, I buy a couple of new and shiny spares with 3 sockets each, and put a couple of Tal runes and Ral rune into one, which gives it a lot of poison and some fire damage. It will do for now. Then I kill Radamant for another free skill point to get Impale up to level 9, which gives it a whooping 500% bonus damage and a 49% slow. Sounds great, but remember that it's still incredibly slow to use, constantly breaks my weapon and, most importantly, limited to a single target, which is not very effective in a game like Diablo. Especially when you have to fight against enemies who can resurrect each other, where I feel like fucking Sisyphus endlessly slaying the same enemy again and again, until I'm able to reach this fucking guardian having a time of his life somewhere in the back. I find the Heraldric Cube to be able to craft stuff and proceed to Maggot's Lair, which is quite easy with Impale, even if a tad slow, especially in the last room, where I have to exterminate every single bug one by one until none are left. Sonic the Hedgehog here in the Lost City drops me my first rare gloves. Not much, but resistances are always welcome. I also put some topaz gems into a socketed helm just to raise my magic find a little bit. In Lost City I run around the whole location just to find out that the exit was right at the beginning. I find myself in this situation much more often than I would like to admit. Wipers from the Viper Temple drop me my second sent item, an Arcana helmet, which is useless usually, but it will be relevant to me later. I also reach level 24, finally unlocking second main skill in my build. Bend. The skill lets me attack every single target in a short radius around myself, providing me with much needed area of effect damage capabilities. Now I have Fend to clear the rooms, and Impale to deal with remaining individual enemies or bosses, so I feel complete. Oh, Arcane Sanctuary, the sexiest location in the franchise. It's pretty much everyone's favorite Starfield screensaver from Windows 95, but with Diablo 2 gameplay slapped on top. Taurash's Tomb is where my first scary moment happens, where I find a unique pack of guardians. They are generally a pain to deal with because even though I do have Fend, it only does damage in a short radius around me, and it's generally not advisable to stand in the middle of the enemy pack on hardcore, so I can't say I have the best room clearing experience. Before fighting Duriel, I buy some towing potions for the same reason as antidotes before. It's temporary cold resistance for me and Alize. Even so, Duriel does a lot of damage, so I have to run away and buy more potions a couple of times. Still, thanks to the slow effect on the Impale, he goes down without too much trouble, and I continue to Act 3. The very first thing I do is I hire a new mercenary, a fire sorcerer aptly named Scorch. Act 3 mercenaries are seldom used in any playthroughs I ever saw on YouTube, with the exception of a lightning variety, but I think they are very underappreciated. I mean, sure, Act 2 mercs are usually the best to make your own character stronger with their auras, while Act 1 and Act 5 mercs can be very strong on their own, with some good gear especially, but none of them solve any of the current issues of my build. Q, the Fire Merc. He doesn't require any gear at all to be effective since he has no physical damage and only ever attacks using his fireballs, which means I can slap some basic resistance and plus skills gear on him to make him very effective very early. His damage type is fire, and he has a very strong area of effect, helping me to deal with physical immunes and complementing my single target focused build very well. And on top of that, he buffs me and my summons with Enchant, adding additional fire damage and lots of attack rating to our attacks. Thanks to Enchant and Penetrate, I shouldn't have much trouble hitting targets up until the end of this run. To make myself stronger, I craft a new spare rune ward, Malice. It's a potent, early rune ward that adds a bunch of damage and 100% chance to open wounds, which adds additional bleed effect on top of every attack that I make. The only downside is drain life 5, which would continuously degenerate my health points unless I counter it, which can be easily done with some socketed skulls, by shopping an item with replenished life, or by equipping Arcana's head, which I found earlier. Told you it will be relevant. First quest of Act 3 is amazing for hardcore. You get a permanent plus 20 to life, which means plus 60 over the run. Another amazing addition to my survival chances is a new passive skill, Evade, which gives me a chance to dodge any attack while moving. You need all survivability you can get with enemies like Szark, a unique spider which always has a combination of Cursed and Extra Strong, which can easily be a run-ender. Other than that, I cut through the whole act like Julia Garner through butter. I find the temple to get the book for 5 free stat points, and just look at how well Scorch does against packs of enemies. At this point he does more damage than I do. One more potential run-ending thing to worry about in Act 3 are those little fuckers. Those dolls are easy to kill, but they do explode, dealing incredible amount of physical and fire damage. Especially in Hell, I really don't want to get anywhere near those. Council goes down easily after I split them apart, and they drop me Sander's Gloves, which is a very nice bonus of 20% increased attack speed and plus 40 to life. Before Mephisto, I run into another Council with Conviction Aura and Lightning Enchanted. Conviction Aura greatly lowers your defense and resistances, and even makes resistances negative, so between this, lightning bolts, and a forest of fire hydras, I have to run for my life a couple of times. Mephisto gets impaled to death, and drops me a helm with Frost Nova and 2 sockets, which I save for later. Act 4 is the worst act in the game. Short, underbaked, all of the enemies are huge damage sponges and barely give any experience at all, compared to Act 5. And fire damage is generally least effective in this act for obvious reasons. At least I get a new, very important skill to help me out, the Valkyrie. Not only does she help me by doing some additional damage and providing a distraction, she is one of the best tanks in the game, making it much easier for me to handle hordes of enemies from now on. Isuel is a great example of how fat and spongy every enemy in this act is, but he does give you a plus 2 skills points, which makes it probably the best quest reward in the game. My build struggles a lot in River of Flames. There are so many spawned enemies that it takes forever to get through all of them. Scorch helps a lot, but even then it's a chore. Breaking Mephisto's Soul Stone gives me a useless Nephrune, which is too bad. In the Chaos Sanctuary I ran out of rejuvenation potions, so I use my gem stash to craft a bunch. The Valkyrie is incredibly hard to kill, but even she wouldn't be able to survive whatever the fuck this is. Another dangerous moment comes from the last seal, guarded by the Venom Lord pack, which quickly surrounds anyone and burns them to a crisp. I have to run around a lot, trying to separate one or two at a time to lower their numbers. Takes a while, but eventually they do go down. Diablo is usually the hardest boss in the game, with his lightning breath skill which annihilates even my Valkyrie in a second. So I have to constantly resummon her, revive my mercenary, and run around every time I get targeted. Diablo drops unique boots, Gore Foot, which gives me plus 20% run speed and some mana leech. Act 5 has the best cinematics that Blizzard ever made in my opinion, and I generally consider it my favorite act alongside Act 2, both thematically and thanks to how it feels to play with much more reasonable monsters with higher rewards compared to Act 4. Also, those barbarians running around do make the world feel more alive. I try to gamble a new weapon, but without much success, so I continue on with my run and the game crashes. At this point, I was broken, defeated, at the end of my tears because I thought I just lost hours of unsaved gameplay since I'm playing offline. But to my delight, it wasn't the case. Last save was right at the beginning of the act. The loot gods were kind to me, so I immediately found a nice armor upgrade for my merc, with resistances, damage reduced, and 2 sockets. I also found this pike with 2 sockets to potentially craft Strength Rune Ward if I can find an M rune. Shank kindly reminds me to always be careful around extra strong enemies. I free up all of the barbarian captives for some runes. I usually do it on normal and nightmare only, since those runes are abundant and generally not needed by the time I reach hell. My merc wrecks some faces, and I get a weapon upgrade, Matriarchal Pike with 3 sockets to craft Malice, with bigger damage numbers and +1 to spare skills. Saving Nani is a must every time for the upgrade resistances and a free rare weapon. She gives me this, but I keep it as a backup weapon for the Ancients, because you cannot go to the town to repair during that fight, and Impale generally breaks my weapon before all 3 are dead. I also do Nil Attack quest, which is kinda useless and unnecessary risky, with only reward being your name on an item, but this was my first run after not playing the game for years, so I wanted to do everything. In my future runs, I generally skip this quest. Ancients are easy enough, just have to make sure to keep my merc alive and don't let them surround me. Throne Room was also generally easy, with some kiting and being careful to stay alive. I even killed the minions, which I often skip, because they're always glad to remind you that you're mortal. And finally, Bale is a complete joke. Thanks to Impale's slow effect, which makes majority of his attacks barely working, I just stand there and poke him with my stick until he is dead. Before heading into Nightmare, I want to do some preparation. First, since I probably won't replace my Death's Guard for a long time, it makes a lot of sense to farm the Death's Hand, which will give me a huge buff. The best place to do it is from a Cow Skin, and according to the calculator, I should get it in about 1 in 80 runs. I even put some Topaz gems into the helmet that I found earlier to increase my chances. And it pays off. After about an hour of farming, I find them. Just look at that. 30% attack speed, 8% life leech, pretty much a poison immunity, plus 15 all res, and most importantly, cannot be frozen. A godlike combo for my character, especially considering how early I've got it. I also went into Nightmare and used up all my cheap gems to buy some cheap ones from Akara, reroll and sell them back to her for some fat cash stacks. And I used this money to gamble some amulets where my luck has struck again. Just look at this beast of an amulet. Huge resistances, a bit of life leech, some magic damage reduction on top. I mean, you cannot want for more. The only thing that would make it more perfect would be +2 to my skills instead of necromancers, but if that happened, I would start questioning reality and would probably go to a casino to put all of my money on 0. Even without skills, this can easily last me a whole run. Now that I'm all buffed up on steroids, I'm ready to make the nightmare my bitch. Or maybe not? But I do find a new rare armor with some resistances and faster hit recovery to replace my stealth. Fortune clearly has a crush on me, and I mean, who can blame her really? While saving Kane, I find a triple socket great helm. Then, the very first run to the countess drops me an EO. All the planets are starting to align, and so I do a couple more runs to find an M, some soul runes, and a Shael. This allows me to make the earliest bulwark helm I will ever make, giving me an incredible boost to survivability, with a whopping 14% physical damage reduced, plus all damage reduced by 7, 10 vitality, 5% to life, a bunch of life leech, faster hit recovery and replenish life. This pretty much is a perfect helm for any hardcore character, and it will save my life more than once, I can tell you that. I also crafted the lore rune ward for my merc to boost his damage. I find a couple of pieces of Arctic's gear set, a hell rune, and another EO. I had to quickly remember that my luck can run out any moment when I had to do my first save and quit of the run after getting stuck and almost killed. And Dale goes down without much fight and doesn't drop anything of value either. At this point I do start to lag behind in terms of damage, and sadly I still haven't found spare bases, so I use a double socket pike to make a strength rune ward to get some crushing blow, which will make me do decent damage even with a normal spare base. I fully expect to replace it quickly as soon as I'll find a decent exceptional or elite socketed base. This will happen pretty soon, right? Right? Oh, and I've shopped for a teleportation staff to have some much needed mobility as well. For now I do the standard route, I kill Radamant for a free skill point, find a Saigon's shield for my merc on my way to Maggot Slayer, where I can flex my poison immunity, and I reach the Viper's Temple, where I have a second crash. I do play on mech, which this game doesn't support natively, which may contribute to its frequent crashes. Still, I do not lose too much progress, and quickly make my way back to the temple. At this point I get to level 50, fully level up my Valkyrie, and have a decent spread between Impale and Fend. I get the last piece of the Heraldric stuff and head straight to Duriel, meeting little resistance along the way. Duriel also goes down without any issues. As I said, the strongest side of this build is killing bosses. After normal Diablo I won't have a single difficult boss encounter anymore. It's the rest of the rubble that's a risk for me. At the start of Act 3, I find Tool Rune and a sword with 4 sockets, in which I make a Spirit Rune ward, probably the most overpowered rune ward in a whole game. It has +2 to skills, faster cast rate, faster hit recovery, and so much other useful stuff that at some point in my future runs I will decide to never use it again. But for now it's new to me, so I give it to Scorch, making his skills much stronger. I also put a couple of runes into his armor to max out his resistances. Scorch does so much damage with his explosive skills now, it's not even funny. The rest of the act goes fast and easy. I kill the council, kill the second council, and barely even notice Mephisto. Act 4 is as annoyingly slow as usual, but I am very hard to kill at this point, so it's just a matter of time before I cut through it. The Forge quest gives me pull, very cool. It's the highest level rune I ever found so far, and I can potentially use it to upgrade a unique spare to its elite version later on, or make a node for Act 5 Merc. Chaos Sanctuary also goes down much easier than on normal, even Venom Lords are not an issue thanks to my Valkyrie, not giving a shit about them all. Here's why Diablo only really dangerous on normal. For some reason his breath attack doesn't hit you at all if you stand very close to him, but only on Nightmare and Hell, probably due to different hitbox, I don't know. It's strange and I have no idea why that is. Act 5 is also pretty smooth, though I do get quite low several times because I keep face tanking everything in sight like a seasoned porn star. One time I barely escaped through the town portal after getting cornered by a bunch of goats with amplified damage on myself. Oh shit. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And because entering the portal again would have been too risky, I had to run all the way back. I do all the quests again, of course, even Nil Attack, which almost kills me right here. charge ability on those Kellys is very dangerous, and that is just one of the reasons for which it's not really worth it to do Nil attack hardcore. But I do end up killing him, so now I have my 2 pieces of Death's Disguise set, named after me. Those random Bloodlords drop me a nice rare ring with lots of attack rating, some cold resist and magic find. Remember how I said that Bulwark will save me more than once in this run? Well, here I would have died without it.
Oh, shit! That was so close! I almost fucking died!
With my heart still pumping, I make my way to the Ancients and use my teleport staff to split them up and kill them one by one. The backup spare comes very handy because my main one breaks halfway through the fight and even backup almost breaks by the end of it. Throne Room gives me quite a valuable charm with cold resistance and plus 19 to life. The minions do spawn with a fanaticism aura though, and fighting them is just... no. It would have been a suicide. So I lure them out of the room and teleport back to it because you don't actually need to kill all of the guardians in the room. You only need to make sure that it's empty to proceed. Bale is... you get the point by now. Okay, fun time's over. I have to get through hell now, somehow. First, I really need a better weapon. I went through the entirety of Nightmare without an upgrade and still rocking a strand pike I crafted back in the days when I was still a young boy, full of hopes and dreams. So, after equipping all the gear I had with Magic Find, I went to farm Nightmare Mephisto. The plan is to make him drop a unique spare, any unique spare, which I then will be able to upgrade to Elite using my pull rune. After all, there are so many unique spares in the game, and all of them are good, except for this one. The only one that would be useless. I spent several hours farming Mephisto, and I get a bunch of uniques like Ripsaw or Steel Clash, or this Teen Frisbee, which I use to test if plus sorcerer skills applies to Scorch. It doesn't. I find Alrasha's Helm, which can be amazing on a physical merc later. I find a decent unique Greaves in the form of around whatever the fuck, with plus 20% run speed, plus 15 all res, and a bit of studs. I find Gall, a unique dagger with 100% magic find, so my routine changes. Now I almost kill Mephisto, then equip Gall and let my loyal knights do the coup de grace, which shoots up my magic find at the moment of the kill to 236%. A set amulet ends up to beaten creds. A Boneslayer's axe, Hexfire, Spell Steal, cool stuff but unusable by me. Skin of the Vapor Magi, an amazing armor for Scorch, making him even stronger and harder to kill. And here, fortune kisses me again. Boys, a French kiss no less. First, I get a string of ears, which is a best in slot belt for me, because it has a whole 15% physical damage reduced, making it 29% in combination with my Bulwark. Too bad I cannot equip it yet, because I also need a source of Cannot Be Frozen, but as soon as I can find one, I'm equipping it right away. And I find Mother's Shield, which has lots of all-res plus 2 sockets. After I engraved it with 2 perfect diamonds, it shoots up to plus 53 all-res, which easily maxes out my mercenary resistances on Hell. I find Death Touch Sword just to complete the set, Trangul's Gloves, Saigon's Helm, a Skulls Collector rune staff with plus 2 to all skills, which I use to summon stronger Valkyrie, Peasant Crown, this thing, Jade Tendo, which has Cannot Be Frozen, but it's a weapon so I cannot use it, Chance Guards for even more magic find, I actually find 2 of those. And finally, a spare! Oh, remember me saying that only one unique spare I wouldn't consider upgrading to Elite? Yeah, that is exactly what I get. Twice. Yeah, you win some, you lose some, I guess. But I do not give up and continue farming. And I am rewarded with Hawkmail, a less than impressive unique armor which nonetheless has Cannot Be Frozen, which means I can use my String of Airs from now on. At this point I decide that enough is enough. I can spend a few hours farming, but not more than that, definitely not days. After all, if I would be after endless grinding, I would simply play softcore. The goal is to beat Hell Bale, not to get the best gear in the game, so as long as I am able to progress, I will try pushing. Before moving on, I also craft a peace armor with +2 to Amazon skills. I need cannot be frozen much more than skill bonuses, so I don't use it normally, but I do put it on along the other gear to summon a stronger Valkyrie. Does make quite a difference, like here are stats at skill level 20, it's 2200 life, 475% damage and 190% defense, while with my summoning gear at level 24 she has 2552 life, 575% damage and 230 defense. The difference is even bigger if I find a skill shrine before summoning, which makes her level 26. Sadly, while I do have amazing gear overall, my weapon sucks. So I spent almost all of my remaining gold to try and gamble a new spare. And I find this rare Hyperion spare with +1 to skills and double socket. Not great, not terrible. Ocean Hell is manageable for now. I'm supposed to be worried about physical immunes at this point, but funnily enough, my absolute beast of a mercenary annihilates all of those ghosts and pretty much everyone else who doesn't have a fire immune. At this point, the only real problem is fire immune monsters, which I didn't expect at all. Or both physical and fire immune, which happens more than you think. Problem is, fire immunity is the most common immunity on Hell. I do pretty much 0 damage without a good weapon at this point, and my Valkyrie only deals single target damage, which makes even basic encounters with shamans and fallen an uphill grind, where I try to slowly push through the horde of endlessly revived little fucks to reach and kill every shaman. It is horrible and I clearly need a proper weapon, so I'm trying to farm again. This time by running a mausoleum. It's one of the few locations in Act 1 that doesn't have any innate fire immunities, so I can run around killing zombies and opening weapon racks, hoping for an elite spare drop. The plan is to abuse the fact that I've learned from Mr. Llama SC video some time ago, that weapon racks always drops the same type of item as long as you do roughly the same action before opening it, like approaching it from the same direction, killing or avoiding killing the same monsters, etc.
That's a great plan, Walter. That's fucking ingenious if I understand it correctly. It's a Swiss fucking watch.
It would have been with a reliable process. I did find a couple setups in which the weapon rack dropped a spear, but no matter how much I've tried to replicate it, it only worked like once in 10 runs, so I didn't get any weapon upgrades again. Since the plan didn't work, I decided to go back to try and farm Mephisto again. I find Windstan's Guard, Saigon's Armor, Mage Fist, Thunder's Boots, this amazing ring with attack rating and lots of resistances, Pine Reaper, 1-inch Refuge, Venom Grip, which is like a poor man's blood gloves, with 5% life leech and 5% crushing blow, Fire Tux, which is one of the best weapons for an assassin, another Talrash's mask, 1-inch Blessing Belt, Rip Cracker, which is an amazing weapon for a physical character who can use something besides a spear, Threads of Cton, not very useful, but the name is badass. Malina's Tenet Belt, I sell it, but it was a mistake. It's the only belt I ever saw with run speed bonus, which would have been very useful on my farming runs. A gold drop belt, and then I get another freakishly good drop in the form of Duriel's Shell, an armor with lots of defense, strength, life, a shit ton of resistances, and cannot be frozen. It is so good that I immediately put a socket in it. I'm definitely not replacing it until the end of the run. This is getting ridiculous at this point, so I am very hard to kill now, even on Hell, but I also don't do any damage at all. I don't want to spend any more time farming, so I've decided to push with what I have. I respect my character to get enough strength to equip that rare spare that I gambled before, put on all of my amazing gear, engrave Shael into my armor for plus 20% fast hit recovery, a perfect skull into my spare for some life and mana leech, and a rare gem with lightning resistance since it was the only one that was still quite low for me. My stats are looking quite good, so there's no excuse not to push anymore. My Valkyrie is very strong, my Merc is melting faces, and I am quite hard to kill at this point. Well, until I do something stupid or run into particularly nasty enemies, that is. Still, every encounter with fire immunities, especially fallen shamans, is a test of my sanity and will to live.
Okay, careful.
I do finally find an elite spear. Too bad that it is superior, which means I cannot add sockets to it. I try to make something decent out of it by imbue, but it's worse than what I have currently. I swear to God, those little bastards got what they deserve from Diablo. Fucks them sideways. And Dio goes down, but doesn't drop anything. Before moving on to Act 2, I decide to visit the pit a couple of times. Pit is great because it's one of few locations in the game where monsters always have level 85 plus, which means any piece of gear in the game can drop here. Too bad it's also full of fire immune fallen. I do find War Shriek, which is a best in slot weapon for a troll barbarian, I think. My heart skips a bit when I see Warfork, which only has one socket. I am cursed by a very strange curse, I'm telling you. I'm both incredibly lucky and incredibly unlucky this run. In Act 2, I find Trangle's armor and do lots of running, trying to avoid all of the fire immunes that I can. So every time I find a bunch of enemies without fire immune, I let Scorch have some fun with them. Another exceptional spare I cannot use because it has 6 sockets. The thing is, with my current runes, I can only make something useful out of the base with either 2, 3 or 5 sockets. So I have to keep looking. This room looks like lots of fun. Good thing they can be killed by fire, otherwise I would have to restart. The Viper's Temple room is quite scary on hell as well. It is very claustrophobic, with a bunch of charging Vipers with stupid affixes, so I have to run around like headless chicken just to eventually snatch the amulet and escape. Initially I decided to skip Radamant because the road to him is full of fire immune skeletons, but my greed prevailed and I decided to risk it for a free skill point Biscuit. I get close to death once, but overall it was more slow and boring than hard. I had a day between my streams and a little bit of free time to kill, so I went on another short run to the pit. I never do the actual run off stream, but I do prefer to do my farming between the streams because I think watching me looking for a single useful spare for 2 hours while talking with myself and 2 people watching the stream is about as fun as eating nails without salt. The run is short, but I do find an Immortal King's Helm, and finally, I was so excited when I ran to town to cube some sockets into it. The chances of getting something useful out of it are 50-50, and it's 4 sockets. Well, useless again, but I save it just in case I'll find some runes later to make a potion or something. Back to Act 2, and I gotta say, Arcane Sanctuary wasn't nearly as bad as I expected. Yes, it's full of physical and fire immunes, but as usual, Scorch busts all of the ghosts like it's 1984, while me and Valkyrie are dealing with fire immune goats, which is much easier than nobody is reviving them. Durio is as easy as the rest of them, yeah. Act 3 welcomes me with some cool rare boots, 30% faster run, a bunch of resistances and magic find. Don't mind if I do. Spider Cavern is as far as I get before I decide that I cannot do it anymore, and I need to change the tactics, so I came up with a new one. Each location in the game can have 2 out of 3 elemental immunities, which means there's always one element that can be effective at any given time. And Act 3 mercs are available in 3 distinct flavors: fire, cold, and lightning. You can see where I'm getting with it, right? I'm starting to juggle mercs like it's no tomorrow, hiring a new one every time I change location. Fire immune spiders? No problem. Here's a lightning merc. Lightning immune apes? How about a cold merc for you? Cold immunes, you say? Sure, back to the fire it is. I do it so much that at some point I run out of mercs to hire. That's a first. My strategy works very well though, and I reach Council in no time. And they even drop me magic vampire bone gloves, from which I can craft the blood gloves. Remember me saying that Fortune loves me this run? Well, that was an understatement. Fortune is obsessed with me and has a shrine dedicated to myself with my photos, my hair, and my stolen underwear all over it. Just look at this bullshit. +2 to passive and magic Amazon skills, Life Leech, 9% crushing blow, 19 to life, cold resist, and magic find. And all of that from the very first crafting attempt. If I had a fraction of this luck in real life, I would have been a millionaire already, I swear. Anyway, to Mephisto we go. Enjoy the view, be careful not to die from those, and just like that, Act 3 is done. Only 2 more to go. At this point, I have a couple of days before my next stream, where I would do a final push to complete the run, so I decided to try and farm a weapon one last time. This time, I equip all of my magic find gear, put the difficulty up to 7, and do lower Kurast runs for several hours. This means finding a layout of lower Kurast with a bunch of super chests and opening them up over and over and over again in hopes of getting some runes. Now, I cannot get white or socketed weapons from super chests, but there are a bunch of other containers on my way, plus some weapon racks. And I also can get some good charms while I'm doing it. And I don't have to kill anything, just run around without dying, opening everything that can be opened. I do find a unique spare pretty quickly, and it's... oh, fuck you, game.
I need a weapon, man. All you got is goddamn nunchucks. You know where I can get a gun?
A little bit of running around and I get my first rune drop, and it's a lamb. That gives me another idea. If I can find core rune, I can craft a Lawbringer rune ward and give it to Act 5 Merc. Lawbringer gives a Sanctuary aura, aside from other cool stuff obviously, and that aura lowers physical resistances and breaks physical immunities of monsters, which means much easier time for me, Valkyrie, and the Merc himself. Plus, I won't have to suffer from fire immunities anymore. So, I begin my hunt for a core rune. For some time I continue on with lower Kurast runs, but all I find is this cool charm with damage and attack rating instead. Plus 6 to damage doesn't seem like a lot, but don't forget that my skills have percentage damage, so plus 6 easily turns into plus 60, which is still not a lot, but when you stack a bunch of those together, you are suddenly doing much more damage. I also find the skill tiara for stronger Valkyrie, and this jewel with 15% attack speed, which I put in my armor. I decided that it would be easier to find a core rune from the Countess, so I went there. Almost died on my way to her. Fuck this. Bad start, bad start. And again.
Oh no. What is fuck?
And again.
Oh shit.
Okay. Then I farmed her for some time, found another pool rune, Loom, and Mal. I've pretty much got every rune I could get from her, except for core rune. I even found a matriarchal pike, crafted sockets, and received another 4-socketed one. I guess the game really wants me to complete this run without any decent weapons. Back to lower Kurast it is. I do find a skiller charm, which is very exciting, even though plus 2 spare skills does not help me a lot right now. I also find a Thunderstroke. Too bad I'm not a Javelin Amazon. That would have been an amazing find. Another matriarchal spare, 1 socket. Kehagan's Wisdom.
Thanks.
And here I finally get what I wanted. A core rune. And a fall rune. And a Hyperion spare with 3 sockets. I thought that will never happen. Now I can at least craft something good like Hustle and another craft with 6 sockets. This one is with 2, another one with 4 sockets. I'm out of perfect amethyst at this point, and it's time to complete my farming and move on with the run. Incredibly excited, I ran to Nightmare Act 5 to hire a new Merc, a Frenzy Barbarian this time, and I crafted a shiny new Lawbringer into a Balrog's Blade. Yeah. That was a slight problem though. And I can see some of you who know the game facepalming right now. I didn't know the game that well though, as I never used an Act 5 mercenary before. If they look like a barbarian, walk like a barbarian, and quack like a barbarian, then it's logical to assume that they use weapons like a barbarian. Or so I thought. Barbarian in Diablo 2 is capable of using 200 swords in one hand, so I made Lawbringer into a 200 sword, fully expecting to also craft a note in another one, give both to a Frenzy Barb, and enjoying him fucking up some evil.
I will not tolerate the forces of evil!
This is not the case though. Frenzy Barb can only use 100 swords. And I've used my core rune already, so I had to hire a Bash Barbarian instead. A much less cool version, but capable of wielding a single two-handed sword. At least he will provide me with Sanctuary Aura. That wasn't my only fuck up though. As I hired a Bash Barbarian, I forgot to remove Bulwark, which I gave to the Frenzy one, and I sold Dull Russian masks before, which means my Barb will be running around without a decent helmet. I feel the crushing weight of my shame and the freezing touch of my ancestors' disappointed gaze. Don't be like me, kids. Be like Jesus.
Lemonade?
Will there be enough?
Oh, there'll be plenty.
At least I crafted a hustle armor for him. Oh yeah, I was farming a core rune for so long that by the time I got it, I was able to craft a second one. I could have used it to craft a hustle spare for myself, but I've decided to try another rune word I've never tried before. Passion. I mean, not only does it have a lot of damage, finally, but it also provides additional protection by blinding and fearing monsters. It also gives me an ability to summon Heart of the Wolverine, a druid summon that provides even more damage and attack rating, as long as it stays alive, that is. And as a backup weapon for the Ancients, I made a Strand. I am in my prime now, so it's time to finish the run. I gotta say, the Barbarian Merc wasn't an unstoppable force of nature I was hoping for him to be, but I definitely was. I was finally doing some decent damage and having so much survivability and crowd control that I could face tank everything in sight like a seasoned porn star. Huh? I did this joke already. Forge takes about 5 minutes to clear, but I do get... Oh well, it's not like I need much help anymore, so who cares. Chaos Sanctuary is a slog, as usual, but it does get spicy a couple of times. Do I need to say anything about Diablo fight at this point? When you have lots of cats in the beginning of Act 5, it can also be very dangerous because their spears targets, which means you can suddenly catch like 20 spears with your face, even if you were standing behind your summons. Be careful here, fellas. At this point I just run to the finish line, skipping anything unnecessary. And here I get reminded why going near charging skeletons with amplified damage on myself is not such a great idea.
Fuck. Fuck. Whew! That was so close!
That was at least third time I was clearly saved by my Bulwark. Frozen River feels like I'm in World War I trenches. That's where another skill of mine comes in handy, actually, called Slow Missiles. I neglected it up until hell, but it's a great skill. Slowing all of the projectiles your enemies throw at you and lowering their damage, which makes sections like this much more manageable. I save Anya just to up my resistances as high as possible and proceed to the Ancients one last time. The fight is not too bad, takes a while, but I kill them one by one eventually. Oh, it was pretty stupid of me to kill Fire Enchanted one myself. Good thing I had full life when it happened. On my way to the throne room I find Griswold's heart. And this is... just no. No way I'm going in here. Imagine dying here right before completing the run. The throne room itself wasn't too bad. I had to do some kiting around, and my merc kept dying, but I cleared everything except for minions, which I lured out of the room again. And here's my killing the very last enemy, and finally completing my first successful hardcore solo self-found run. I gotta say, I never expected to actually do it on my first try, especially not on a build like this, but I am incredibly happy that I did. The incredible rush of feeling of accomplishment, relief, and straight up happiness I've got from doing it confirmed to me that I was right, and that is exactly the way to play and enjoy one of my favorite games. So, this is definitely not the end. I am going to do it on every single character. Check out my live streams if you want to see it as it happens. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more. Oh, and here are my final stats and gear.